Good afternoon, Rebbe.
Shalom, Shalom.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, we're able to keep our learning, and the outside world is not disturbing us with keeping us too busy.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. I actually joined the kollel in the morning, Rebbe. So we'll
Good.
see. Meanwhile, I could keep it up, and we'll see what happens.
Which kollel?
It's in Rabbi Weinfeld Shul, right near the Rebbe's house, and it's a small kollel. A lot of people from. There's only about, I think we got an extra 2 people today, so there may be 10 people now. And the person who's overseeing the kollel is the Daf Yomi shir that I go to. Levi Gelbfish is his name.
Oh, sure. I saw him put the ad.
Yeah.
Levi's an awesome Talmud Chacham.
It's a tremendous Talmud Chacham. Yeah. So, and I go to his daf every morning, so this is just an extension of that.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's excellent. Can I know her?
We have a minute or two to see who else is going to join us. So far, just the 2 of us.
Ezra Free just said that he took his mother to the emergency room. So the doctor said the wrong antibiotic may be dangerous for her. We had that with my shver 2 times that he he took an antibiotic that was very, very detrimental to his health, and so it could be very serious.
I know. I experienced it. Not pushing. Wrong antibiotics. It was actually an antibiotic I had taken before, but at that point, I was sure that was the end of the story. So the doctors were just holding on for life. But yeah, not push it. Not push it. Okay. All right, so we'll jump right in. What's left in Sivit, what we haven't covered yet in Sivit Tov Rishayin Aleph, is the halachas that are Manicha L'Malam Gimel Tvachim and Mitzvah L'Hanicha L'Matam B'Zayim Miyut Tvachim. Where to put it, and then of course put it to the right, left of the mezuzah. That's the 2 halachas we've learned. We haven't gotten yet into the deeper insights. So he brings the Torah Berachos brings it. He touches upon things which are so, you got to catch it. And then when you touch it and you chop it, it's just like such eye openers. There's a famous ma'aseh that's told in the family that the Zeder Motala was traveling once. He was in Talna by little Talna, his uncle, great uncle, for Chanukah. And little Talna was known, he was a tremendously sharp person. He would pose riddles. And if he whatever he was, his kavanas for the riddles, there's many stories. But that Chanukah, so the Motel was there for the first night of Chanukah. So little Talna walked into the room and took a real tall chussid. Yankele the he went to says, Yankele, he says, your wife is very short, isn't she? The chussid looked at the rabbi and said, yeah. He said, let me ask you something. When you want to tell her secret, do you put her up on a chair or do you bend down to tell her the secret? So he said the chussid blushed, asking such a personal question. And he said, I bend down. He said, oh, yeah, sig. And they went to bed, bench Chanukah left. So the Chassidim knew that among those who were there, the Zeder Motala was probably one of the sharpest. So they asked him, do you know what the Rebbe meant? He says, yeah, of course I know what it meant. It says by Ner Chanukah, that the Ner Chanukah should be lamata miyud, should be below 10 tvachim. Why? Because the Chazal tell us that the Shechin is not sure of lamata miyud tvachim. He says, so, yet here, the place where the Chazal tells us that the Shechin is not sure of lamata miyud, that's where B'dafka, you have to light Ner Chanukah. He says, because Ner Chanukah, the Koich of Ner Chanukah is to go, be able to shine light deeper than the Shekhinah normally goes, to bring the Or Shekhinah into a level that normally the Shekhinah cannot enter. So that was his kavanah. How did he do it? He asked the Chusad, do you pick her up, you just bend down. That was his kavanah. Okay, now the Chassidim were very happy that he chapped what the Rebbe's kavanah was. The next night, Abdul Talna walked in and gave another moshel, which we don't know what it is. But he turned to Machamatullah, he said, this is the Erch nicht ken chappen. Viele dies nicht ken chappen. Okay. So it's one of the stories the Chassidim tell over. We heard the family story, but the Chassidim tell over the story. So we know this, so it tells us that the idea that the Ner Chanukah is Lamala Megimel and Lamata Meyud Tvachim. To Lamata Meyud Tvachim, we understand because there's all the Esser spheres, and that the purpose of the Ner Chanukah is to bring light to there where the Shekhinah can't get to, is where the spheres cannot be made. But the Lamala Meyud Tvachim is an interesting idea, and he brings the mashal is from Hilchos Chanukah, from Hilchos Pesach. Chometz on Pesach, you don't have to be beidik lamata migimel tvachim. There's something that happens to be hiding in the crack lamata. You don't have to be beidik lamata migimel tvachim. Why not? He says because that's the level which chometz exists, and you can't be beidik to the place where you can't find the chometz. It's not the normal way to find the chometz because it's not a place where it's not usable. It's not usable space. In Hilchos Pesach, the only time you have to be beidik is a place that can be used. But on Lamatamet Yud and Gimel Tzvach, it's not called usable space, and in Ruchnius, it's not a place that you could bring kedusha into. It represents the lowest of the midos, and he says netzachad yusod, and the Or Chanukah in the even in its great even though it can go lamata miyud, but it can't go lamata migimel. So that's a midah with which the Ner Chanukah is still stuck. So then he's mavar that there's another cheshbon for that. Why that gimel tvachim? You don't bring Ner Chanukah. It says because it's such a basic element of connection between ourselves and Kodesh Baruch Hu. Netzach represents Moshe Rabbeinu, Hod represents Aaron HaKohen. That's always connected. So you don't have to look for chometz because it's not something that you can manipulate. It's there all the time. Lamata miyud, as you would say, the Baruch Shalom's connection to us is always there at those midos. And it's a fascinating thought because it says we have a tendency to think, there's certain areas where, the Shekhinah is not going to get into, which we really can't say that because the Baruch Shalom is everywhere. So there's the part of Olam Haza which the Baruch Shalom keeps Shekhinah hidden. That's the nature, that's the very essence of Brias Olam, is that there should be part of Olam Agashmi where you cannot, where the Baruch Shalom sustains it, and it has to be there. It's like the foundation. Hod Yesod, that's Hod Yesod. Foundation on a building, we don't see the foundation of a building, and yet without the foundation of the building, the rest of the building can't stand. So is it the nicest of the parts of the building? Absolutely not. You cover it over with dirt. The side is, but it has to be there. And the premise of the midas is that there's a madrega that keeps our world intact, and the Rebbe keeps it intact always, even when we cannot see the Rebbe there. And that's called the midas hayesod. And those last 3 midas, netzach hayesod, are considered the foundation midas. They're the midas with which has to be there. The koyach of Moshe Rabbeinu has to be there in Klal Yisrael. The koyach of Aaron HaKohen has to be there in Klal Yisrael. They're not something that we can elevate or lower down. They have to be there. It's the foundation. So therefore, Ner Chanukah, don't try and bring it down lower than Gimel Tvachim. It's not necessary. It's not necessary to bring it down. It's not something with which we need to exercise our bechira on. We have to exercise our bechira on what we call the midas, which are we would call them emotion, chesed, gvura, tiferes, right? These are the expressions of that which we can know are subject to our avodah. That's how you said are not subject to avodah. They have to be there. So he says, so therefore, the place for the Ner Chanukah is Lamata Miyud Tvachim, which is the top 7 of the meters. And Chacham bin B'das Chesed Gvura Tiferes. And it depends how you count down. But those are the meters with which we can grasp, we can understand that it's possible for us to elevate our world to. But the moment that you get, he says, the moment that you get above, he starts talking about amos. That's tefachim. A tefach is something you can get your hands on. Tefach is a handful. So he says, so these yud tefachim, the handfuls, are things that we can manipulate, we can work with. These are the parts of our hasokas elokus which we are capable of managing, capable of elevating. But when you talk to Amos, above Yud Amos, and Yud Amos is spelled Yud Vav Dalet, so that's it's Chaf Amos, Yud Vav Dalet is 20. So Chaf Amos, it's beyond what our Olam can even grasp. It's beyond you can't see it. The Sukkah, you can't see it. And if you can't see it, it's because it's high enough for us not to be able to elevate something that is far beyond our ability to be able to grasp to see. So, and he alludes to that when we talk about the Zohar, the Kuna Zohar talks about that we have the midas in the Yomim Tovim of the world, and we have Rosh Hashanah, which is the head, but Pesach and Sukkot are called trade Zoyin. They're called our arms. That's right. Pesach and Sukkot are the arms of the Shekhinah. So that's why the Sukkah had the dimensions of the Sukkah. And then we say, Smar L'Tachas L'Roishi, Yamina T'Chabkeni. These are the arms with which we create a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So as long as we're dealing with the Tefach, so then the arms, we're able to create a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you get to the Rosh, you can maybe grasp that there is one, but we're not conscious, we're not aware of how our brain works. Our moich keeps on working, and we can guide our thoughts, we can be magbil our thinking, but we're not really able to say, oh, that part of my brain is working, or that part of my brain is working. We only know that by how it affects the rest of the Ivarim of the body. So the right side affects the left side of the body, the right side of the brain affects the left side of the body, the left side, the right side. You don't see it in the brain. You see it only in the midas. You see it only in our ability to function. So that's called L'mayla Mechof Amos. The Rosh and the Moyach are called L'mayla Mechof Amos. We can intellectualize, but they can't be manifested. You can't manipulate the brain. At least not within, as long as we keep the brain inside of our skull. So therefore, Nesach and Chayyisayd are, which are directional, as we understand. The Nesach is right, the Chayyisayd is left. Again, that's Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen. Those are the right and left of the foundation. There's the right, there's the solid, there's the Yesod, there's the foundation, and then you start to build upon it. You have Nesach rest upon the foundation. She says, so therefore, take the Ner Chanukah, which is to elevate all the rest of the midas, and put it. So Ner Chanukah b'yamin u'mzuzah. Ner Chanukah. So again, Ner Chanukah is b'smoil and the mezuzah b'yamin. He says because the Ner Chanukah, which represents Aaron HaKohen, that's the midas hachoid. That's Aaron HaKohen. That's always called the left. V'smoilai b'yamin hachoid. That's that which keeps us wrapped around with ahava. That's Aaron HaKohen. Aaron HaKohen would therefore be called says that it keeps us aware. That's the midas Aaron. Abbas Aaron was Oyev Shalom, Bread of Shalom. That's therefore the mezuzah will, therefore Ner Chanukah will be b'smoil, and the mezuzah, which represents Moshe Rabbeinu, Nesach, should be on the right. So those are just some of the language that he uses, and in Avodas Hashem, it gives us a great opportunity, because we have a tendency to take our world for granted. How many times we walk by the mezuzah, we give the mezuzah a kiss, we don't stop to think about it. Yet we say that some say you should put your hands on the mezuzah, say Shomer Dachs Yisrael. But there's many different schools that said about putting your hands on the mezuzah. Well, but for the most part, we don't. We have a tendency not to stop and think about it. There's a story that my father would tell often, and it has his own personal expression of it. He said the Zaydu Matal would travel around to different towns that were under his Magidas. And of course the Gvirim, everybody, the wealthy people of each town would always vie for the Rebbe to stay at their home. So he came to one town in which Gvir had made gotten his large house ready for the Rebbe to come. And the Zayim Matala walked over came to the door of the house and put his hand on the mezuzah and stopped. And he said, is there another door to go in? They said, yeah, there's the side door of the house. That's where the Hamayinam go in. He says, let me get in. Let's go through the other door. Let me get into the other door. Okay, it went around, so the Chassidim wanted to know, what happened with the Rebbe said it's not to go in through the main entrance. So they went, they checked the mezuzah was kosher. They checked around. And finally, they realized that in order to honor the Rebbe, the Chassid had put out a tapestry, a beautiful piece of embroidery on the floor as the Rebbe's entrance into the house. And that tapestry normally was used to cover his wife's bed. The Chassid had, it was a nice piece of embroidery. The place of it was usually on his wife's bed. So they realized that, that the Rebbe, the Chab, that this came from Amitas Nida. And so there's us, so the Chassidim got all excited. The Rebbe's Ruach HaKodesh, As the Zayda Mata looked, they saw the Chassidim were tumbling. He says, what was tumbling? He says, the Rebbe had Bavizna Ruach HaKodesh. He says, how do I show Ruach HaKodesh? Because the Rebbe stopped and put his hand on the mezuzah, and then the Rebbe didn't go in, and we found out that the reason for it was because on the floor in the entrance to the way was tapestry with embroidery that was from Amitas Nida. So the Rebbe's Ruach showed Ruach HaKodesh. So the Rebbe says, ich weiß nicht, was redt. He says, Shulchan Aruch steht, v'yis v'yom v'layla. Right? You're supposed to learn Torah day and night. How's it possible? You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have atzrochim, Yeah, it's impossible to learn Torah 24 hours a day. Torah says, he says, what's the eitzah? The eitzah is that before you do something, you should think about the halachas of it. Think about the halachas b'tziyas hapas, halachas netilas yadayim, halachas of doing how to do business, mekach memker. You have to halachas of halachas beis hakisei. Before you do something, you have to think about the halachas. Then the ma'aseh is considered to be a piece of Torah, because you're taking that action and connecting it to Torah. So then you're mekayim v'gisa b'yom v'layla. Okay. So he says, I put my hand on the mezuzah, and I wanted to think about Hilchas mezuzah, and instead, I'm trying to find Hilchas nida. So I said, something's wrong. I'm trying to think about Hilchas mezuzah, and it's gefallen rein Hilchas nida, something's wrong. So I asked if there's another door. So my father told me, he told over the story to Shlomo Hyman. He was in yeshiva in Tervadas. Shlomo says, give a kick the godless of the person shoyled b'machshavtei. He knows that when the wrong halacha comes into his mind, sasim as a titzach happens in the world. He says, give a kick. He says, a mensch can boin sein machshove. Be teufels. So my father used to tell over the story often. He says, because we live in a world with which we take so many things for granted, and because that's the mahalach b'chol yom v'yom, we take things for granted. Chanukah doesn't play a big role in the big picture of the events of Klal Yisrael. We don't celebrate the wars. We don't celebrate all of the change. And some say because ultimately Chanukah led to the Malchus of the Chashmonaim, and the Malchus Chashmonaim ultimately led to the base of the Churban Beis Hamikdash. So their Chazal were not so impressed with making it to Zman Simcha. So they made it to Zman Simcha v'Zimra, Halal, but not a Zman Simcha. There's no Sudas attached to Chanukah. Because Sefer Tabisel about what should have accomplished for Klal Yisrael. If it would have accomplished a complete elevation of Klal Yisrael, then there wouldn't have been a Churban Bayis Sheni. It didn't overcome conflict. It didn't overcome machlokes. In fact, the Malchus Chashmonaim are known historically to be filled with machlokes, and that was one of the sources for why there was so much sinus chinim in the Bayis Sheni. Because we call it the politics of the Beis Chashmonaim, was very bitter. It led to terrible events in among the rulers of the Beis Chashmonaim, Yanai, etc. They stoned him with the esrogim. So Chanukah, therefore, is an opportunity to create an awareness that there's for us to be masakin, to make our awareness of Chanukah is mezuzah b'yamin ner Chanukah b'smoil. There's a place where we need to put ourselves so that we're keeping balance in the things that affect our world. That's Torah and Avodas Hashem. Shlosh Dvarim Ha'olam Omed Al Torah V'Avodah V'Gemilas Chasadim. Moshe Rabbeinu represents Torah. That's the mezuzah. Avodah represents Aaron HaKohen. And Gemilas Chasadim is what has to come out of the pulas of Klal Yisrael. So maybe that's why at the beginning of Siman they said the Chanukah is a zman for that you have to give tzedakah. The filo ani and Spanish means tzedakah needs to light their Chanukah, and it's especially at the time when the aniyah were machzer al psachim, because Gemilas Chesed is the ultimate balance of which makes Chanukah into a zman simcha. We give something to somebody else, it's a zman simcha. So these are some of the remozim for these halachos. And we'll be zeicher that we'll be able to take the awareness of Chanukah and we'll be able to create the tikkun of bring the air of Aaron HaKohen into our world, and we'll be able to zeicher that we'll be able to have that. Oyev shalom, b'oyev shalom, machzirim liban l'avim shavash, l'avinu shavash. All right, have a wonderful day. In Bez Hashem, tomorrow we will still we'll start Chafrei Zayin Beis.
Yeshakayach Rebbe.
Yeshkoyach, Rebbe.
Wonderful day.
So good to see you, Rabbi. Have a beautiful day. And Shlomo, a good day to you as well. Hatzlacha.
We share only B'suras Tevis.
Amen.
Take care.